Imagine waking up one morning to find a letter taped to your front door. Not a bill, not a notice about trash pickup. No, this was a demand. Tear down your home, or we'll do it for you. That's exactly what happened to me when my HOA decided my house didn't fit the community image. They actually tried to demolish my home, but instead of losing everything, I fought back. And by the end of the story, you'll hear how I turned the tables so hard that I ended up taking over their headquarters. Let me give you some background. When I first bought my house, I thought I had finally struck gold. For years, I had been saving, scraping together every extra dollar, skipping vacations, eating at home instead of going out, because I wanted a place I could truly call my own. When I walked into that house for the first time, it felt like a dream finally coming true. Sure, it was a little fixer-upper, but nothing outrageous. The kind of home where you could see the potential shining through. A fresh coat of paint, some elbow grease, a few weekends of DIY projects, and it could be perfect. And that's exactly what I did. I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. I patched up the walls, refreshed the siding, replaced the old leaky gutters, and even gave the lawn some love. Week by week, I saw my vision coming together. The grass was green, the bushes were neatly trimmed, the paint gleamed in the sunlight. Honestly, by the time I was done, my house looked better than half the properties on the block. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine, and that made it priceless. Now, like a lot of neighborhoods, mine had a homeowners association or HOA. And in the beginning, they seemed pretty harmless. They sent out those monthly newsletters filled with things like holiday decorating contests, neighborhood barbecue announcements, and little reminders to keep trash cans out of sight. They had rules about fence heights, mailbox styles, and lawn maintenance. Annoying? Sometimes. But nothing too crazy. I figured as long as I kept my yard clean, paid my dues on time, and stayed out of trouble, I'd be fine. And for a while, I really thought I was. I wasn't the kind of neighbor who blasted music at 2 a.m. or left broken down cars in the driveway. I minded my business, waved politely when I saw people, and did everything by the book. I honestly thought I was in good standing with them. But then, out of nowhere, came the letter. I'll never forget the feeling of seeing it taped to my front door, flapping in the wind like some kind of scarlet warning. At first, I thought it was maybe a late payment notice or something about community maintenance. But when I ripped it open and read the words inside, my stomach dropped. According to the HOA board, my house, my freshly painted, neatly maintained, perfectly livable house, did not meet architectural standards. They claimed it posed a risk to property values. Their solution? They gave me 30 days. 30 days to either tear down and rebuild the home according to their rigid design guidelines, or else they would file for a demolition order themselves. I remember just standing there in my driveway, letter trembling in my hands, thinking, this can't be real. This has to be a mistake. But it wasn't. These people, this group of neighbors in polo shirts and clipboards, actually thought they had the power to bulldoze my home. And let me tell you, it felt like a waking nightmare. I had just poured everything I had into that house. My savings, my sweat, my time, my pride. And now, after all of that, they wanted to wipe it off the map because it didn't fit their image? It was surreal, unfair, and more than anything, it lit a fire in me that I didn't even know I had. At first, I tried to handle things the polite way. I thought maybe this was just a misunderstanding, something we could clear up if I explained my side. So, I went to one of their meetings. I walked in calmly, took a seat, and waited for my chance to speak. When it was my turn, I laid everything out. My house was safe. It was up to code, and honestly, it was in better shape than most of the houses around me. But every time I tried to get a word in, they shut me down. They didn't want to hear logic, facts, or even reason. It was like talking to a brick wall. One board member even leaned across the table, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "We decide what belongs here, not you." That was the moment it clicked. This wasn't about rules. This wasn't about safety. This was about control. And once I realized that, something inside me snapped. If they wanted to play power games, I wasn't going to sit back and let them win. So I started digging. See, HOAs may act untouchable, but legally, They have to keep records, and homeowners have the right to request them. So I asked for everything. Meeting minutes, budgets, contracts, expense reports, receipts, anything they were required by law to hand over. At first, they stalled, trying to delay me, but eventually they had no choice. And oh boy, did I strike gold. Buried in those files was evidence of years of mismanagement. Community funds that were supposed to be used for landscaping, neighborhood repairs, or improvements. Instead, they were being siphoned off. The HOA president had been paying for his personal lawn service, on our dime. Another board member had reimbursed herself for maintenance supplies. That didn't exist. And one expense report? It showed thousands of dollars spent on a conference trip to a beach resort. A trip no one in the community had ever approved. They weren't just bullies. They were thieves. At first, I wasn't sure what to do with this information. It felt like holding a live wire in my hands. But then I realized I wasn't the only one who felt cornered by these people. A lot of my neighbors had been quietly frustrated for years, nickel and dimed with fines, threatened with warnings, treated like children in their own homes. They just didn't think they had any power to push back. So, I started sharing what I found. Carefully, one neighbor at a time. Over coffee, on front porches, during evening walks. At first, people were hesitant. Nobody wanted to be the first to stick their neck out, because going against the HOA usually meant one thing: retaliation. Fines, harassment, constant nitpicking about every little thing in your yard. But when I showed them the receipts, the hard proof of stolen money, people's hesitation turned into outrage. Suddenly, I wasn't just some guy fighting with the board. I was the person holding the key to exposing them. One by one, neighbors joined in. And soon, it wasn't me versus the HOA anymore. It was the entire community demanding answers, and the board had no idea what was coming for them. The showdown came sooner than anyone expected, at the next HOA election meeting. Now normally, these things were boring and predictable. A handful of people showed up. The board nominated themselves again. Everyone nodded along, and it was over in 20 minutes. Business as usual. The board was used to running the neighborhood like their own little kingdom, rubber stamping their positions year after year, without challenge. But this time was different. When the meeting started, the board looked confident, almost smug, as they sat behind a long table at the front of the room. Clipboards stacked neatly, bottled waters lined up, nameplates polished. They were ready for their usual performance. But as they looked around, their smiles began to fade. Because instead of the usual handful of neighbors, the room was packed wall-to-wall with homeowners, angry, fed up, and ready for answers. Every chair was filled. People were standing in the back, leaning against the walls, some even crowding the doorway just to listen. The board shuffled uncomfortably, but tried to carry on. They opened with their usual agenda: dues, landscaping, community improvements. That's when I stood up. My heart was pounding, but I had everything I needed, organized, highlighted, and ready to go. I walked to the front and laid it all out. First, the expense reports, thousands of dollars for maintenance that never happened. Then the receipts, personal landscaping paid with community funds. Then the kicker, an entire conference trip to a luxury beach resort, disguised as HOA business. I could hear the gasps ripple through the crowd. People leaned forward in their seats, whispering in disbelief, shaking their heads. I looked over at the board members. Their faces were pale, eyes darting, sweat gathering at their temples. They tried to interrupt me, to call me out of order, but it was too late. The truth was out in the open, and the room wasn't on their side anymore. By the time I finished, you could feel the shift in the air. The power had drained from the board and flowed straight into the hands of the homeowners. The people they had bullied, fined, and intimidated for years were no longer afraid. They were furious. Then came the vote. One by one, neighbors raised their hands, not just to remove the corrupt board members, but to replace them, to put an entirely new group in charge. And when it came time to elect the new president, the vote wasn't even close. They chose me. In one night, everything flipped. I went from being the guy they tried to crush, the man whose house they wanted to demolish, to sitting in their chair at the head of the table, their so-called fortress of power, the headquarters they guarded so carefully. It was now mine. And let me tell you, walking into that office for the first time, holding the keys in my hand, felt better than any victory I've ever had. Because it wasn't just about me saving my house. It was about justice, about showing them, and everyone else, that no one is untouchable when the community stands together. With the board gone, the truth spilled out faster than any of us expected. Once we dug into the records deeper, it was like peeling back the layers of an onion, except every single layer reeked of corruption. Money that was supposed to go toward playground repairs? Gone. Funds earmarked for fixing broken streetlights? Missing. Even the budget for neighborhood events like summer barbecues and winter festivals had been drained dry. For years, we had been paying into this system, trusting these people to take care of the community. And instead, they had been lining their own pockets. The new board wasted no time cleaning house. We brought in auditors to make sense of the mess, and once everything was tallied, it became crystal clear just how much damage had been done. But here's the best part. Instead of leaving people hopeless, the community rallied. Neighbors who barely knew each other before started volunteering, pitching in, and rebuilding what the old board had neglected. What had once been an HOA that thrived on fear and intimidation was now being rebuilt into something positive. We set new rules to make sure this nightmare could never happen again. Transparency became the cornerstone. Every budget, every project, every expense was posted publicly so homeowners could see exactly where their money was going. No more secret deals, no more shady reimbursements, no more mystery trips disguised as conferences. If money left the HOA account, everyone knew why. And the results? Night and day. Instead of threatening homeowners with fines, the HOA started helping them. If someone's fence was leaning, instead of a nasty violation letter, we organized a Saturday work crew to help fix it. If a lawn needed attention, neighbors pitched in instead of punishing them. Common areas that had been left to rot were finally cleaned up, repaired, and improved. We planted new trees, repainted benches, even added a small community garden. People who had once dreaded hearing from the HOA actually started looking forward to what we could accomplish together. And then there was my house, the one they had tried to erase. It's still standing, stronger than ever. I didn't just save it from demolition, I turned it into a symbol. When neighbors walk by, they don't just see my front yard or my freshly painted siding. They see proof. Proof that no matter how powerful a group looks, no matter how loud their threats, they can be stopped. That house became a reminder that when people stand together, no one gets to play dictator over their homes, their lives, or their community. So yeah, the HOA tried to demolish my house, but in the end, I demolished their corruption. I took their headquarters, flipped their system upside down, and turned it into something better for everyone. And here's the lesson I want you to take away. Knowledge is power. Neighbors are allies. And sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't just fighting back. It's winning so completely that the very system built to crush you ends up working for you instead.